So I'm going to create a new folder and I will name it src for source. And in this folder, I will create a new file and name it app.ts. .ts is the file extension for TypeScript files. Now, let's talk about variables and types in TypeScript. TypeScript introduces static types to JavaScript. This means that when you define a variable, you can also define the kind of data or information the variable can hold. Let's go ahead and define some variables. Okay, so here we have defined some variables. Age is of type number, username is of type string, and a student is of type boolean, aka true or false. When we define variables in JavaScript, we use the let keyword or const. In TypeScript, we still use the let or const keyword to define our variables, but now we can also define the kind of values our variables can hold using the TypeScript type annotation. Now, this code is a little bit redundant because we are not just declaring the variables, but also initializing them with values at the same time. And because we're initializing them with values, we don't necessarily need to define their types. TypeScript is smart enough to know the type based on their values. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to remove the type annotation right here, okay? And hover on the variable name. And as you can see right here, TypeScript knows that this variable is of type number. And if I try to reassign the variable with a value of a different kind, let's see what would happen. Immediately, we get a red squiggly on the line. And the problem is type string is not assignable to type number. So now let's see how to define array types in TypeScript. To define an array type in TypeScript, we simply put a pair of square brackets in front of the type. Here we have defined an array of numbers, and if I hover on the variable name, as you can see, we have a variable numbers of type number array. And what this means is that we are not going to be able to push a new value of a different kind to our numbers array. Remember, in JavaScript, we have the array.push method that we can use to add new values or items to the end of an array. Let's try to push a string value to the numbers array. Immediately, we get another red squiggly on the line. And the problem is argument of type string is not assignable to type number. So the IntelliSense powered by TypeScript is smart enough to know that this is an array of numbers and therefore should not contain a string value. But of course, we can push a number value. And that is how you define an array type in TypeScript. What if you want to have an array that can hold mixed values? Well, TypeScript has a special type, any. Just as the name implies, any type allows you to store data of any kind. I'm going to remove the number here and simply type any and push a string value to the numbers array. And as you can see, TypeScript is happy with that. Let's talk about tuples in TypeScript. In TypeScript, a tuple is simply an array with fixed types and order. Here we have an array of user, and what this means is that this array can only hold two elements of type string and number. Okay, let's try to swap the values and see what happens. So I'm going to move 24, I'm going to cut and put it right in front of Alice. And TypeScript is not very happy with that. And the problem is type number is not assignable to type string. The first element is supposed to be of type string according to this definition right here. And the second element of type number, if I swap it back, as you can see, the red squiggly underlines are gone forever. Moving on, let's talk about enums in TypeScript. An enum or enumeration is simply a collection of named constants. Enums help make our code more readable and maintainable. They can be very useful for defining categories like user roles, statuses, and the list goes on. Let's see how to define an enum in TypeScript. Alright, here we have an enum named color. Okay, by default, each individual name will be assigned a numeric value starting from 0. So red is going to be 0, green 1, and blue 2. But we can also explicitly define their values. Let's see how to define their values explicitly. Enums can also be used as types. Now, let's talk about functions in TypeScript. In TypeScript, when defining a function, we can also define the parameter types and return value of that function. Let's see how to do that in TypeScript. Alright, here we have a function, and the first parameter is of type number, and the second parameter is of type number as well. And this function must return a number value. And right here, we're simply returning x plus y. let's go ahead and call the function with some values and store the return value in a variable. And now let's log the value to the console. It is time to see how to execute or run our TypeScript code. If you remember, I mentioned earlier in the tutorial that we're going to be using VS Code Code Runner. So let's go ahead and install VS Code Code Runner. So I'm going to go to the extensions tab, alright? And I'm going to start typing Code Runner. Okay, it looks like I'm not connected to the internet, so let me quickly switch that on. Okay, I think I'm connected right now, so I'm gonna type Code Runner, and here is it right here. Okay, I've already installed and enabled the extension, so go ahead and install it and let's continue. So I'm gonna go back to our code, and if you notice right here we have this play button, or something that looks like a play icon, and if I go ahead and click on it, that's going to run our code. And as you can see here, we have result 16 printed for us. Let's talk about default values and optional parameters. Alright, so our name parameter is of type string, but it also has a default value of guest. Age parameter is of type number. The question mark means this argument is not required, and the function must return a string value. Right here, we're simply checking if age is defined. If that is true, we return this part. Otherwise, we return this part. Okay, let's go ahead and call the function. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and save the code and run it. Hello guest, and hello Lucy, you are 24 years old. Awesome. We can also declare functions in TypeScript before we define them. Let me show you what I mean. Alright, so here we have a function declaration and here we have a function definition. So basically we're saying this must be a function and the first parameter must be of type number and the second parameter must be of type number, and this function must return a value of type number. Don't worry about the name square. This is not how you implement a square function, if at all there is anything like that. Okay, let's go ahead and call the function. So I'm going to call square. And here we have it, result 81. And that is how you declare a function in TypeScript. Let's talk about interfaces in TypeScript. Interfaces let you define the structure of objects. Let's see how to define an interface in TypeScript. And that is how you define an interface in TypeScript. So let's go ahead and see how to use the interface to create a new object. Okay, as you can see, we have a red squiggly underline, and the problem is empty object is missing the following properties from type person. We are missing name and age properties. Is student is not here. And why is that? We have specified that is student is optional, is not a required property. So let's go ahead and define those properties. And as you can see, the red squiggly underline is gone. Let's talk about classes in TypeScript. Classes are blueprints for objects. In other words, we use classes to define properties and methods for objects. Let's go ahead and see how to define a class in TypeScript. So here we have class animal with name and age properties. The name property is of type string. The age property is of type number. But notice public and private prefixes. Public means that the name property is publicly available to all the instances of animal class. Private means the age property is only accessible within the animal class. These are called access modifiers in OOP, or object-oriented programming. Let's go ahead and instantiate our animal class. save the code, run the code. All right, Murphy is nothing years old, so a little mistake right here. So basically I'm checking if this is greater than 1, and if that is true we say yes, and if not we just say yeah. But then I forgot to also output the value of age right here. Okay, so I'm gonna clear the output and run it again, and there we have it. Murphy is 6 years old. Awesome.